As we head into week 3 of the college football season, we're going to take a look at some hot and cold starts. It's way too early to look at this, but we're going to take a look at some things that could have implications down the road. We'll look at both teams and players, talk about what needs to continue happening for those teams and players off to a hot start, as well as what needs to change for those that are struggling. We'll start with teams that are off to a cold start. UTSA, the Roadrunners, it hasn't been a great start to the season. We knew they were going to lose to Texas A&M. A 42-24 loss wasn't bad. I think that Robert Henry Jr. at times kept them in that game, but the loss to Texas State was disappointing as well. Now, it's not the slowest start by any means, but it's definitely not the start that this team wanted, and that's something to keep an eye on if you're a Roadrunners fan. Virginia Tech is off to a horrible start, and Brent Pry needs to turn things around quickly. You lose to South Carolina on a neutral site, a game in which it was pretty close, but your offense clearly was making too many mistakes. Then a punt return TD and a long touchdown catch by Nick Harbor kind of opened up the game for South Carolina, and they kind of were able to keep Virginia Tech at bay. Vanderbilt, this game started better for Virginia Tech, and then the Commodores turned it on, and Virginia Tech did not have any answer in any way to keep up with that team. It was not a good win, and Brent Pry is on the hot seat right now, needs to figure things out very quickly. The UCLA Bruins had higher hopes coming into the year, but an 0-2 start is starting to raise some alarms. Deshaun Foster has to figure things out quickly, because this is a team that got destroyed by Utah to start the year. That was a surprising result, not because we thought that Utah couldn't win. I think a lot of people expected Utah to win, but losing 43-10 was not a great start to the year. Then you follow that up with a loss to UNLV on the road, 30-23. Now, I will say that Nico Iamaleava looked better in week 2 than he did in week 1, and the team did look a little bit better, but losing to UNLV is not a great way to start your year. Foster's got to turn things around, and if they don't, it could be a long year for the Bruins. San Jose State was a team that was expected to potentially compete for a Mountain West championship. And while that's still technically in play, the start that they've had has not given a ton of people confidence about what they can do. Losing to Central Michigan 16-14 in the first game of the season was awful. The offense struggled, made a ton of mistakes, and ultimately gave the Chippewas a win. Now, we knew they weren't going to win at Texas, but it was just another demoralizing game to play in. The offense again struggled, did not look good, and then now you're sitting at 0-2 instead of 1-1. And then finally, Georgia Southern. This is a team that was a potential sleeper in the Sun Belt this year. It looks like that might be put on the back burner. You lost 42-14 against Fresno State. They followed that up with a 59-20 beatdown at the hands of USC. They cannot stop the run right now. Waymon Jordan and Rayshawn Luke for USC and Fresno State respectively ran all over this defense, and now they go into week 3 having to face one of the better rushing attacks in Jacksonville State. Now, this is a team that can turn things around still. The Sun Belt competition is still relatively wide open, but with how they're playing right now, it doesn't bode well for how they start conference play when they go to James Madison and host Southern Miss to start conference play there. This is a team that needs to get things sorted out quickly because it's not a good start for them. Then we'll go to hot starts. South Florida is not really a surprise here. First, they beat Boise State. That's a result that I think some people anticipated. And a 34-7 win, though, was definitely a good statement to beat. The team was just in the college football playoff, but it was the week after. Last week, they beat Florida on the road 18-16. Byron Brown so far has been the steadying force for this offense. The wide receivers have stepped up in a big way. Chaz Nimrod, Keyshawn Singleton have both stepped up. The defense is playing a lot better than people anticipated. They're being opportunistic. They're taking advantage of mistakes by the other team, and they're keeping those offenses in check. USF is off to a great start, and they have another opportunity to shock people when they play Miami in week 3. Cal is 2-0, and with everything that happened this offseason, I think that has to be a surprising start for this team. They beat Oregon State 34-15, which was a result that could happen, but I think it's how they played. Now you have a freshman quarterback that we'll talk about here in a little bit. he has been a big reason why they've started strong. They follow that up with a 35-3 win over Texas Southern, and now they get a chance to host a Minnesota team that is very tough to beat and will give them a good measuring stick of where they are and how far they need to go. Florida State ultimately is probably the biggest surprise of the 2025 season. Mike Norvell's team is coming off that 2-10 year in 2024, and people were expecting like maybe they just make a bowl game, but it appears they have bigger goals than that. They start the year by absolutely stunning everybody, by beating Alabama 31-17, and then they follow that up with an impressive performance, putting up 77 points. Yes, it was against East Texas A&M, but this is a team that means business. Tommy Castellanos looks really good. Deuce Robinson had a big game last week, and this is a team that's playing a lot different than last year, and they have a ton more confidence than they did in 2024. Everybody knew the Oregon Ducks were going to be good this year. It was just a matter of how high their ceiling actually was, and so far, they are playing arguably the best football of any team in college football. A 59-13 win over Montana State was a strong start, but then they played Oklahoma State. And while nobody was picking the Cowboys to win, Oregon absolutely took it to them. 69-3 win. Dante Moore looks phenomenal. DeCorian Moore appears to be wide receiver 1 in Evan Stewart's absence. And this defense continues to make teams look real bad. Again, the competition hasn't been great. It's not going to be great until September 27th. But this is a team that is taking care of business. They are taking everybody seriously. And right now, they are one of the scariest teams in college football. And then there's Tennessee. Tennessee is a little bit of a surprise. Now, the Syracuse win, it doesn't look as great after what we saw with Syracuse and UConn, but they did follow it up with 72 points against East Tennessee State. Now, again, similar to previous teams we talked about, Florida State and whatnot, that's not going to be the most impressive win, but the fact that you're putting up points at that kind of a rate shows that this is a very different team. That is a team that is going to play with a ton of confidence, and is really going to come down to Joey Aguilar and what he can do. You have a big game coming up against the Georgia Bulldogs. You have to play well in that. Otherwise, people are going to think that maybe that first game was just kind of a fluke, but this is a team that is really exciting and maybe ahead of where people expected them to be. Next, we'll dive into the players that are off to hot and cold starts. Let's start with hot starts first. Dylan Lonergan is having a good season for Boston College so far. And yes, it's been 2 games, but this has been a guy that's had an instant impact on this offense. 75.9% completion percentage, 658 yards, and 8 touchdowns. He is playing really well. Lewis Bond has been one of his favorite targets, and Boston College, even though they lost to Michigan State, this offense is going to be very tough to stop for anybody that faces them. Next is going to be Sawyer Robertson. You can make an argument that Sawyer Robertson is the best quarterback in college football. The comeback win against SMU was electric, and he is off to an incredible start. 859 yards, 7 touchdowns. He threw for 440 yards last week against the Mustangs. Baylor's defense needs to get things sorted out. Dave Aranda has a lot of work to do on that side of the ball, but this is an offense and Jake Spavital, the play caller, that are doing a lot of good things. They have a ton of weapons. They're super deep. Even with the loss of Dawson Pendergrass, the running back room is solid. The wide receivers and tight ends are loaded. This is an offense that's going to be a problem, and maybe bring back some of that nostalgic Big 12 vibes for the offensive production. UTSA's Robert Henry has had a great start to the season. He got off to a big start against Texas A&M. That was probably the biggest surprise that we saw. We expected him to put up numbers against Texas State, but what he did against Texas A&M shows that this is a guy set for a career year. I think that he is set to have big numbers, and he is on track for one of the best seasons that we've seen from a UTSA running back in their history. 336 yards on the ground. He's averaged 10.2 yards per carry and 4 touchdowns. Jonah Coleman is also having a good year at running back for the Washington Huskies. Now, Washington hasn't been talked about a ton because they've been playing so late, and also the competition they've been playing, but Jonah Coleman is off to a great start. 39 carries for 288 yards. He's averaging 7.4 yards per carry, and he has 7 touchdowns, which is first in the entire country. Jonah Coleman, we knew was going to be solid for this team, and he's off to a really hot start for the Huskies. And then we'll go to the defensive side of the ball. Vincent Anthony Jr. off to a good start for Duke. This is a team that just lost to Illinois in disappointing fashion, but it wasn't due to Vincent Anthony. He was able to make some disruptive plays, especially early on. Already this season, 9 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. He is on his way to posting career numbers, career highs for this Duke Blue Devils defense. And when it comes to the NFL draft, he has already increased his stock, and people are definitely paying attention to what he is doing. Then we'll go to the cold starts. EJ Warner has yet to throw a touchdown pass for Fresno State, and somehow the Bulldogs are 2-1. Warner has not lived up to expectations. He's completing almost 69% of his passes, so he is fairly accurate. 476 yards, the 0 touchdowns though, and 5 interceptions are a little bit concerning. Right now, they're just finding ways to win. It's not really because of him. It's because more of the rushing attack and the defense being opportunistic. But this is a team that if he gets things going, they could be really scary in the Mountain West. Walker Eget has been overall a disappointment, and I would say we kind of expected him to struggle against Texas, but in a way, he didn't look nearly as bad this past week as he did against Central Michigan. That was a game in which he did not look good. He did not look consistent. And there were a lot of questions about what he was going to be able to do for this team going forward. And if this team doesn't get things sorted out quickly, they're going to continue losing football games. They're already 0-2, and their quarterback, even though he has pretty good talent at wide receiver, is not off to a great start. Cade Klubnik, this shouldn't be a surprise, has not looked good. The first game against LSU, he looked lost. He looked very confused and rattled, and the Troy game didn't really do much better. Now, granted, Antonio Williams has been out with an injury. That doesn't help, but you still have plenty of wide receiver talent. Clemson has recruited at a level that you should be able to have success regardless of who is out and who's playing, but you still have Brian Resco. You still have plenty of talent at wide receiver, at tight end. There's no reason why Clemson should look this, I don't want to say bad, but this mediocre early in the season. The quarterback has to figure things out. He has to look better because he is pretty much the answer to all of their questions. Arch Manning's on here. This shouldn't be a surprise. Looked a little bit better in week 2, but did not look good against Ohio State. Now, there definitely were some good things, but in terms of production, he is off to a slow start. 465 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Even last week when he looked good, he himself even said things look sloppy. It did not look good for this team, and they are going to have to figure things out quickly. Texas is a team that wants to be in the college football playoff, but right now it's their defense that's pretty much carrying them. And then finally, Cam Coleman. It's not that Cam Coleman has not been playing well. He's definitely been getting open. It's just that Auburn hasn't really thrown in the football that much. 8 catches for 100 yards. He's averaging 12.5 yards per catch. Not bad, but not the start that we anticipated. This is a guy that we had high expectations for coming into the year, and it just hasn't happened. I'm not saying it can't happen. And again, it's not a bad start. He's just off to a slower start. Same thing with really the rest of the pass catchers. Eric Singleton hasn't get off to a fast start. Horatio Fields, Malcolm Simmons. You have a number of pass catchers that have tons of talent and can be really good for this Auburn team. They just haven't been utilized as much. But that's who I have here. I think that this is still going to be a really exciting opportunity for a lot of the guys that are on cold starts. It's been really fun to see the guys that have started out hot. We'll see if they can keep those going. Same thing with the teams. As always, if you have a comment, leave it below. Let me know who are your hot and cold starts for the season. Subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.